go. And we are going to kick things off. So good morning, or excuse me, good afternoon, students, employees, and community members. I'm Erin Cunningham Ritter, representing the College of Arts and Sciences Be Well program, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to this month's Let's See You Well event titled Building a Secure Financial Future, Strategies for Saving, Investing, and Achieving Financial Independence, featuring Diane Hirschhorn, who is a lecturer of finance in the Leeds School of Business and a wealth manager. We're also excited to host Diane this spring for a deeper dive into these topics and more. So do be looking for more information on that session in the spring. Finally, just want to recognize this event is co-sponsored by the College of Arts and Sciences JEDI team. So check out more wellness and JEDI resources, research, and workshops at our websites. Now I'm pleased to introduce my co-host, Marisha Lopez. Marisha.
Thank you, Erin. My name is Marisha Lopez. I'm the program manager for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in the College of Arts and Sciences. We are proud to partner with Be Well to bring you these inclusive wellness offerings. And before we begin, I'd just like to note that closed captioning is available by clicking the live transcription button in the menu bar. And this session will be recorded. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation, but we do ask that you try to keep your questions more general if you're asking them during the presentation. And if your question is more specific, more personal to your own circumstances, leave that until the end for the Q&A portion. And now I will pass things back over to Erin to introduce our Let's See You Well expert of the month, Diane Hirschhorn.
Well, like I said, it's my great pleasure to introduce Diane. Diane Hirschhorn is a lecturer of finance in the Leeds School of Business, and she has over 20 years of wealth management experience as a financial advisor, providing complete wealth management strategies to clients. In addition to lecturing at CU Boulder, she is currently a consultant to financial institutions. Previously, she worked as a managing director at First Republic Bank and also at Merrill Lynch and Goldman Sachs. During her career as a wealth advisor, she received several industry awards. At CU Boulder, she was a Marinus Smith Award recipient. Ms. Hirschhorn received a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics from Cornell University and an MBA from the Anderson School at UCLA. She was also a certified private wealth advisor. Now, without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce Diane Hirschhorn for her presentation titled Building a Secure Financial Future, Strategies for Saving, Investing, and Achieving Financial Independence. Let's all give her a warm welcome. Thanks, Diane, so much for being here.
Thank you so much to Erin and Marisha for inviting me. I just love giving presentations like this. So just give me 1 minute while I set up my slideshow. And while I'm setting this up, all my students refer to me as Diane. You could refer to me as Diane as well. You do not need to call me Professor Hirschhorn. And feel free, as both Marisha and Erin said, to raise your virtual hand and ask questions during the presentation. We'll also have time for Q&A at the end. My background we already just discussed, but I just wanted you to know why I'm really here, because I spent more than 20 years managing money for people who had $10 million to north of $100 million. So they're very, very wealthy families. I actually love my work. But one day I woke up and I said, wow, like if they were to write something on my tombstone right now, they might say something like, Diane made rich people richer. That kind of didn't have the ring that I was hoping it would have. And I realized all of my friends, family members, a lot of people were asking me for financial advice. And I realized the quality of the advice that was out there, but by and large was awful. And so I decided to do something about it. And I started to teach a class at CU completely on a whim. Someone asked me to teach a class for the MBA students in advanced portfolio management. And I simply loved it. So I ended up selling my business practice. And now I really teach at CU. And I just love sharing information like this. Finance can be really intimidating. And most of us were embarrassed that we don't know it. We've never been taught it in school. And these are some of the blocking and tackling skills that we really need for life. Before I tell you anything specific, since I do still provide financial advice on a corporate level, nothing I say really should be considered specific financial advice for your personal situation. I'm just here to try to teach you tools and techniques and things that hopefully will educate you so you can think about learning more and potentially implementing. So, as Erin had said, we're going to divide this seminar into two different seminars. Today, we're going to talk about an understanding of financial independence. We'll learn a little bit more about how to earn interest on your bank account. We'll learn how to set effective and realistic retirement goals. And then we'll understand how to create a simple budget. And then I'm going to open it up for Q&A. Next January or sometime next year, we're going to have part 2, which is really more of the investing side of it. So we'll learn the different types of retirement accounts and investment accounts, and we'll learn basic skills. How do I choose the best investment for me within my investment accounts? And then we're going to learn how to decide, should I pay off debt? I still have student debt. Should I be saving more? Maybe I should be investing. How do I create a framework to make that decision? Okay, so if you were in one of my classes, you would know that I really like participation. So I'm counting on some volunteers here. Can someone guess, raise your virtual hand, please, and just guess what some of these people have in common? Anyone? You do not want me to sing the Jeopardy song, which I will if I don't get a volunteer, but can I get...
Diane, we do have some comments in the chat.
Great.
Ben says blew their money.
Yeah, Ben, you are right. Okay, you got that one really fast. So most people have this perception. All I need to do to achieve financial independence or to have a good life is to earn a ton of money. And I could have a lecture just on professional athletes, politicians, actors, singers, and so forth, who have earned a ton of money. Like Mike Tyson earned career earnings more than $400 million. All of these athletes or famous people went broke. They all went bankrupt. Someone else tell me, what do you think these 4 people have in common? Anyone?
Aren't they all presidents?
Yes, nice. Okay, Kelly's got it. They are all presidents.
And we've got some others. Their faces are on money, says Janelle, and they were politicians on money.
Okay, I'm not sure if Hamilton was, but these 3 were.
And then Megan says, did they die unexpectedly?
Yeah, that's a good guess. Maybe. Really, though, these 4 men all went bankrupt as well. So here are former presidents of the United States who had access to arguably some of the best and most valuable resources out there. And all 4 of these people went bankrupt. So why? Like, even if you're rich, powerful, access to resources, we aren't taught the basic skills in most of us on how to manage our own money. So what I want to talk to you today about is financial freedom or financial independence. Like, why should we care about this? Why even bother? Because it reduces stress and improves our health, first and foremost. Most marriages, number 1 reason for divorce in the United States is the stress associated with fights over money. It also has health impacts, gives us anxiety. Secondly, I love this one, which is I want to help give you control of your time. When I teach my undergrads and actually my grad students about financial independence, the greatest gift I can give someone is not teaching you how to be rich in the sense of, I need a lot of toys and possessions. The greatest gift that financial independence gives you is the ability to own your own time, to spend it how we want to spend it. Like teaching this class, you don't make the same earnings as I did in my previous life working on Wall Street, except it gives me so much meaning doing this. And that's a wonderful thing that you can get from creating financial independence. And lastly, I really do believe in academic studies which suggest that there's a very big disparity in knowledge among various groups. And so part of the reason to help teach this is to create financial empowerment for women and minorities who statistically are less involved in financial decisions and don't have the same access to resources. So the first skill I want to teach you is how to earn more interest on your bank account. Why? Because it's so easy, and you're going to see you can dramatically improve your return right away with just about 15 minutes worth of work. Okay, so I want to ask, I won't call on you because it seems like people don't want to be called on right now. Can you raise your virtual hand if you know that you bank, your primary bank right now is with a major bank like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Key Bank, Chase, so and so forth? Can you raise your virtual hand if that's you? Okay, many people do. And now I want to ask you, does anyone know who has their bank account at a major bank? Do you know how much interest you're getting paid? What rate? Raise your virtual hand if you know the rate. You have an account at either Bank of America or Wells Fargo or someplace else, and you know exactly how much interest you're earning, the rate. Okay. What does that tell you? No one knows the rate. I think I had one person out of the entire group. So if no one is monitoring the interest rate you're getting paid, do you think this is an opportunity for you to get a really high rate? Or is the bank who knows, the bank institutions know you're not monitoring the rate? So it's unlikely they're going to pay you a high rate. So let me just walk you through how much they're paying you if you have your money at a big bank. So I'm going to show that to you. Then I'm going to ask you the question, can you possibly earn more? This is an example of Bank of America's rate. I monitored it over the weekend. It's going to be the same, I believe, at all of the big banks. So project one, when you get off this call, is to look up your bank account, and just your search is going to be Wells Fargo interest rate savings account or whatever bank you have. What you're going to see is the rate you're getting paid on almost all big banks, all of them, is 1/100th of 1%, 0.01%. Most people look at this number here and think it means that they're getting paid 1%. In fact, it's 1/100th of 1%. So this project came about because my daughter, I wanted her to open up a bank account because I was trying to teach her about money. And I realized we opened it up at Bank of America. And I realized that it was costing Bank of America more money to mail her a statement that each month than the annual interest she got paid on her bank account. And so then I said, wow, like there's got to be a better way. So let's just say we had a gentleman, Kwame, who deposited $100,000 in a Bank of America account, and he was earning 0.01%. So how much would he earn on $100,000 over the course of a year? So he would earn $10, and I'll show you that calculation in a minute. So instead, what I'd like all of you to do after this call, step one is look up how much interest, what's the rate that you're getting paid on your bank account. And step two, let's shop around. Let's spend maybe 10 minutes trying to find a better rate. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So I've done the work for you in the interest of time. I'm published a list of resources. So all of the websites I'm recommending, I don't have an affiliation with any of these companies. So I'm not specifically picking on Bank of America. They were just my example. I'm going to give you a list of all these resources so you don't have to write them down. So Kwame would have earned $10. And the way I got to that calculation is I took $100,000 his balance and I multiplied it by 0.001 and get $10. So can he earn more? So I spent maybe 10 minutes this weekend looking up the 4 different websites I've recommended, and I saw he could earn 5.5%. I mean, this is insane. This is free money, just my opinion. Why is it free? Because it's going to be the same risk level. You're not going to open up a bank account at some random bank that doesn't have insurance. I'll show you how to screen for them. And he's just dramatically improved his investment return, which adds up. This is, in essence, what I would call free money. And what that means in my mind is I earn more interest, or I get a bit better investment return without increasing my risk. So in essence, he earned $5,490 more per year without working an additional day. And so one of my favorite ideas for my students is helping them either earn more income without doing a lot of extra work. So we're not working at CU anymore. We are working here, but we're not working another hour to earn extra money. So I'm walking you through again, you'll have a listing of the resources, but what I did is I went to this website called Doctor of Credit, and I simply searched under bank accounts, and I used their drop down menu for best basic savings rates. And I'm only showing you about 8 banks here. There's a list of maybe, I don't know, 50 banks that you can choose from listed by their rates. That's how I found it. So the 2 top banks I saw this weekend was something called Pi Bank and Poppy Bank. And I do have to say, if I were the marketing person, I'm not a marketing person, I'm a finance person, but I was thinking, Poppy Bank, Pi Bank, who wants to open up a bank account with these crazy names? It can't possibly be secure. And when I put my money in a bank, I want to make sure I get that money back. How can I get peace of mind? I'm looking for FDIC insurance, and that is insurance provided by the federal government that guarantees you will get your money back up to balances of $250,000 per person. So my husband and I together, if we have a joint account, we could theoretically put up to $500,000 in this bank together, and both of us together would be insured up to $500,000. So this has the same level of security as your big bank, as Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and so forth, because it's coming with the same insurance. Okay. So a couple things I would do if I were you. I would definitely look up the interest rate on your current bank account when you are done with this session. And then I would use those 4 websites. I list them in the resources, and I would make sure anytime I'm going to move my money or open up a bank account at another bank, just look for that FDIC insurance symbol. And I've given you a hyperlink also, so you know what it is and more of the details, and you can get comfort with it. I would check the minimum balance, because certain banks might say, oh, well, we'll give you 5%, but you need to keep, I don't know, $50,000. And I don't have $50,000 in my bank account. So you want to make sure that you qualify. Most of the banks that are going to be listed are going to have very, very low initial balances, but you want to make sure. I would check on the fees, because you don't want to open up a bank somewhere just to get an increase in yield if you are constantly bouncing checks, for example, and maybe every month there's all these charges for $35 per check and so forth. That won't be most of us listening on this call, but I want to make sure I mentioned it.
Hey, Diane, before we go much further, there's a timely question in the chat from Betsy.
Sure.
Can we be confident that these relatively unfamiliar banks are insured by FDIC, not just posting the logo?
I think that's a great question. And here's how I would understand the answer. So first of all, the banks and the links are somewhat vetted by the providers of these websites. So I cannot guarantee that, nor will I guarantee it. But I can say that there'll be hyperlinks on these websites, and the hyperlinks will also give you reviews. This number of positive people, kind of like Yelp, except that they've gone through a process. The other thing I would look for is the secure sign-in, so HTTPS, right? So if they have secure sign-ins, again, I personally, in all the years I've been teaching students this, I have never seen a link to a bank that isn't legitimate and FDIC insured. I guess another thing you could do is a secure search, just to make sure, like size of assets and so forth. I actually will tell you, I am not earning 5.5% interest on my current bank account. I use a bank called Ally, ALLY. Probably pays above 4% right now. I also use Vanguard for my main banking needs as well. That pays above 5%. I don't need to have the bank with the very highest rate. I am very confident that rate changes. And so my husband always taught me, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I am very happy to earn between 4 and 5%, as long as, because that's such a huge increase in rates than the 0% that my big bank would have paid me. And Vanguard, for example, Vanguard Investments is enormous. Ally Bank, also very big. Marcus, SoFi, there are plenty of them. They're quite good that you may know better than a Poppy Bank. It turns out Poppy Bank is located in California. I don't live in California, obviously, but I've been told it's actually larger than I had imagined. So there is, if you don't feel comfortable, I'm fine with saying, then don't invest with Poppy Bank. But in the list of top, let's say, 30 banks, there's going to be other banks that you will know and recognize that maybe you can get more comfort with. And I would certainly vet, meaning do a little research before I actually placed or invested money with a bank, just to make sure it's legitimate. Hopefully that makes sense.
Diane, that is awesome. Actually, Janelle placed a resource in the chat. First of all, before we get to that, I just want to say I did post the document that Diane is referring to with additional resources in the chat. Along with that, Janelle has posted a link to a resource where you can check to see which banks are FDIC insured in your area. And then finally, there's a couple of people are interested. Is the security of FDIC for big banks equivalent to NCUA for credit unions?
Yes, it is. Like, so essentially those are the same thing, both of them. I don't want to say it's equivalent because I actually do not know the fine details. Like, is there some kind of difference? Yeah, one of them essentially is for backing credit unions, and the other one is backing main banks. And the main reason the government came up with these programs is to give investors confidence that they didn't have to worry or have a run on the bank similar to what we had in the Great Depression. And as a matter of fact, for those who remember, a couple of years ago, Silicon Valley Bank, there were several different banks that did go under. And the FDIC did step in, and not only did they return up to $250,000 per bank owner, they actually insured investors for the full amount of their bank deposits. I personally would not count on that. I think it's better to keep all your balances less than 250. The government does not want another run on the banks. So I feel pretty strongly that if it's a legitimate bank, they will back up at least the deposits up to 250,000 per social security number. Any other questions? Okay. I love these questions though, because it shows me that you're interested and that hopefully you're thinking through, will I implement it? And that's what I'm hoping to encourage you to do, to listen and to change and implement. There are lots of different other types of savings options. If you look at that same website, so this was Dr. Credit, all 4 websites are good though. And I just did a search for CDs and I saw that I could also decide to purchase what's called a certificate of deposit. Essentially, I loan a bank money, in this case, up to 11 months. I would get paid less to do it. Here, it's 5.25% is the highest rate, and so forth. Why might I do this? If I was comfortable locking up my money for a longer period of time and I was concerned, interest rates they will fluctuate, they do fluctuate. And so this would be an opportunity to the extent I wanted to essentially lock up my money for a short period of time. I could also buy treasury bonds or all kinds of other instruments that would help give me peace of mind. That, for example, the US government, I personally cannot envision a situation, I might be wrong, where the government doesn't pay you back for your deposits, in part because the US government can print money at any point. Like there could be high inflation as a result, but they can always print more money to pay back bondholders. Next, I wanted to mention, hang on a second. I somehow lost my link. Give me one sec.
And while you're looking, there's a pretty specific question. Where can I find the CD information on the Doctor of Credit website? Is it on there or is there a different resource?
No, it's on Doctor of Credit, and you'll see on the top menu, one of the drop-down menus should be bank deposits or something like that. When you hit that drop-down menu and you open it up, you will see a very long list of CDs. In addition, another website, I'm not affiliated with any of these, but another website I find useful is deposit accounts. I would check those 2 generally, just my opinion, not financial advice. They tend to have terrific listing of lots and lots of different accounts. So I would cross-reference both. Okay. The other thing that's interesting, the Doctor of Credit does a really good job of this, is they point out, hey, you know what? You're working and you're trying to get extra income. So for about 15 extra minutes of work, separate from, I've looked at my bank account, I realize I'm not getting paid a lot of interest, so I want to switch accounts, and I've done that. In addition, there's a little bit of a game some people play to open up accounts, bank accounts, and to get bonuses to open up these accounts. So this is just an example of one that I found on the Doctor of Credit website. Chase will give you either between $200 and $900, depending upon the type of account that I open, a checking account, a savings account, or both. There are different limits. For example, this one, they will, if you open up a checking account, they'll give you $300. There's no minimum balance. I don't know. It's something like $1,000. I can't remember the details. The savings account is trickier in this example. You need $15,000 to open up this account to get a bonus of $200. But if you do both, they're going to give you an extra $400, and you can keep the money there. And I've done this in the past for just the minimum time period, in this case, 90 days. And then I close these accounts. So it's just a game. You can decide. I'm not endorsing this. I'm not like encouraging everyone to do it, but I would say just buyer beware. On the Doctor of Credit website, there's not only a link to different accounts that pay you bonuses and telling you what the requirements are, but in addition, they have a PDF available there that says, how do you go about doing this? Like, how do you get the money to fund it, and so forth, and what are the risks? And they do an excellent job of spelling that out. Okay, so this is an example of how I found this Doctor of Credit, and I went to their savings accounts, and then I just said, like, which are the best bonuses through the links for September of 2024. So here is a list of 4 different websites. I've included it on your list of resources. And I think in the scheme of things, sure, it's nice. What I'm telling you to do is to consider increasing the income on your savings account as long as it has FDIC insurance. I think this is a really smart idea because you improve the investment return without taking more risk. Most people who are on this call who are also saying, well, that's great, Diane, but I only keep $10,000 in my bank account. And so instead of earning, I don't know, Kwame might have picked up, I think in our example, almost $6,000 or $5,500 of interest. Because I only keep 10,000, I'm probably only going to make $550. So first of all, I want you to think about your time. And I would say it might take you 15 minutes to actually do the research and open up an account, a new account. So what I say to my students is, if I can get paid in this example, $550 for 15 minutes of work, on an hourly basis, I'm getting paid $2,200 per hour. And so I'm not making $2,200 at CU. Maybe you are, but I believe that's a good use of my time. That's how I kind of figure out my hourly wage. In a bigger picture, though, the biggest expense most of us have is our home and our mortgage. And so what I want you to do, to the extent you have a mortgage, especially if you bought it in the last couple of years where interest rates went up so high and mortgages have gone up so high, in the last month, mortgage rates have come down. I am not going to predict what's going to happen with interest rates. That's a loser's game. It's very, very difficult. But the Fed has indicated that they're going to continue to lower mortgage or interest rates, which will lower mortgage rates. At some point, it may make sense for you to think about shopping around for mortgages. And the way to do that is the exact opposite of what we did to improve the interest rate on our savings account. When you're looking at your savings accounts, you want to increase your rate and make as much as possible. For debt, that means credit cards and mortgages and car loans. I want to keep the cost of my loans as low as possible. And the dirty secret, just my opinion, when people buy or buy houses, our real estate agent encourages us to either go to our primary bank to get a mortgage because we already have an account there and we think it will be faster to get approved. The second place is they introduce us to a mortgage broker. But the chance that that mortgage broker or our primary bank, the chance that that bank is going to have the lowest rate possible, not likely, in my opinion. And so I encourage you, as interest rates come down, if they do over the next year or two, I'd be looking at the rate that I'm paying on my mortgage and shop around and see if it makes sense to refinance. And I've included a mortgage calculator link to calculators.net. Again, it's on the links I've given you. And basically, it helps you compare the terms of your mortgage. And they also ask you, hey, how much is it going to cost out of pocket? What are the fees involved for refinancing? How do I know if this makes sense? And so it's the detail of this is beyond the scope of what I have time to discuss today, but at least I wanted to give you a heads up and open that up for discussion. This can make the difference of saving $50,000, $100,000, sometimes more. There is a professor in the finance department. And fortunately for that couple, I happened to be talking to the wife, the spouse, and she was telling me a few years ago her current mortgage rate. And even though this professor was an expert, he never looked at the detail of his loans. So I saved them tens and tens of thousands of dollars by saying, shop around and refinance. And that calculator will help you do it. Any questions thus far on that? So again, that is one of my favorite ideas because idea one was earn extra money on your bank account for maybe 15 minutes worth of work. Refinancing might take you an hour to shop around for the lowest rate and figure out if it makes sense. And then there are some fees involved, but that can save you oodles and oodles of money with not a lot of time investment. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is how do I set a retirement goal? Because most people say, oh, I'm never going to be able to retire. It was easier years ago when my parents did this. Maybe I'd have to be Warren Buffett, one of the most famous investors in the world, or maybe I have to win the lottery. And I'm going to say, no, everybody on this call can do this. So the first thing we all should know is, how do I figure out how much I need? And this is just crazy to me that we are not taught such a basic and simple formula in grade school, right? How can we ask people in the United States to retire when we don't ever teach them? How do I even figure that out? Like, is Social Security going to be around? How much should I be saving in my 401k plan? I don't understand any of this. And it's quite simple. There was a study that was done long ago, and it was called the Trinity study, but it's also more commonly today known as the 4% rule. And some people got together and they said, how do we help people understand what's the retirement goal? When's the end of the race? How much do I need to save? So what you need to do is take your annual spending. What's your budget for retirement? I'll show you how to budget for it in a minute. What's your annual spending that you want, and divide it by 4%. And that should be your retirement goal. It's slightly more complicated than that because essentially the amount that you're spending today, if I want to retire in 20 years from now, probably I need more because of inflation. So the best solution is to take your annual spending today, grow it by 3% a year, let's say, because that's historic inflation. So if it's, $10,000 per year now, I would grow it by a rate of 3% per year, and so forth. So mathematically, this is really dividing by 4% is the same thing as mathematically multiplying by 25. Multiplying in our heads is just a little bit easier for most of us than dividing by 4%. So that's what I'm going to do right here with a couple examples. Let's just say Lee came to me and they say that they desire to spend $100,000 a year in retirement. That's their goal, $100,000 per year. How much do they need to retire? Drum roll. This couldn't be easier, because what we're going to do is take $100,000 and multiply by 25. So they need $2.5 million. $2.5 million. We either got there by taking their annual spending in retirement and dividing by 4%, or annual spending, same thing, multiplying by 25. 25 times 100,000 is 2.5 million. So that's pretty easy for us to understand. Voila. Like, we have the finish line. We know what the goal should be. Sophia wants a portfolio that generates $50,000. Now, each of us on this call has a different lifestyle and different goals for retirement. And so for me, I hated my first job. I detested it. And I realized very quickly, hey, the key to handling the pressures of work and the pressures of life was potentially, I'm going to build a portfolio. Remember, I had no financial training whatsoever, none, not a single finance class in college, but I became an expert because they said, hey, all I need to do is figure out how big a portfolio I need, and then I'm going to invest that money and I will get there. I'm committed to it. In this case, if my spending was less, 50,000, I only need 1.25 million. Only seems like most of us are sitting on the call saying, are you kidding me? Only 1.25 million. But I'm going to assure you that if the markets behave as they have in the past, and we have time, all of us have time because we're still working, we can all get there through compounding. Any questions on that math before I quickly talk about budgeting and then open this up for Q&A? Okay, great. So budgeting, there are two major ways to budget. First is the traditional way. Everybody always says to me, like, can't you create a spreadsheet or show me how to budget? So I'm going to give you some tools to do that. But I also want to introduce you the concept of thinking outside the box. So a classic way of budgeting is to say, okay, this is how much I can afford to spend on groceries and eating out, my mortgage and my student loans each month. These are my essential skills or essential expenses. And then I want to save a certain fraction. And also I have some wants, like instead of making food at home every night, I want to eat out at a restaurant every X number of days. Okay, that's the classic way of doing it. This is how much I'm going to spend. And whatever I'm spending after I'm done, I save whatever is left over. And then long ago, I read this quote by Warren Buffett, essentially saying, that's what most people do. But really, what people should do is they should save first and spend whatever is left over. Because most people, I'm going to teach you how to budget. Maybe you'll set it up months, now. Very, very, very few people actually stick with a budget. So what I recommend you do is automate your savings. All of you have automated your savings at CU because you were forced to put 5% of your paycheck into your retirement accounts. Automatically, it's done for you, and the university matches it $2 for every dollar you put in. And we're going to talk more about that in the next session. But in addition to that, I highly recommend that you take a certain fraction of your paycheck, maybe 5% more. I don't know, be fantastic if you could save even more than that, even a few percent. And what I recommend that you do is automatically put that into your investment account or your savings account. And then you don't have to think about, oh, how much can I spend or not? Most of us are pretty disciplined about not wanting to build up credit card debt. So spend what you have after you've saved. And if you put your savings on autopilot or you're investing, you don't have to think about it. I always get the questions though. I want a budget. I want to understand how much I can afford for like a home remodel, for I don't know, redoing my driveway, whatever is the expenses. And so these are three pretty good apps that I've seen on budgetings. You Need a Budget. If you're a student at CU or you're taking any classes at CU, you can get a free year of this. And I find this tool extremely effective to helping people stick with a budget. Tiller is really good for if you already have a budget or you really like Excel. And then I'm going to teach you a very low-tech tool called the 50-30-20 budget. And I've also provided a link for this on the list of resources. What the 50-30-20 budget does is it helps create a framework of how much I should be spending on certain categories. So 50% of your after-tax income should go toward your needs, your housing, your student loans, your car payment, 50%. And then 20% should be going toward either paying off my debt or increasing my savings. And then the balance is everything else that I may want. So when I'm trying to decide, can I afford a new car right now? Well, if it's not going to fit into this 50% of my total after-tax income, probably now is not the right time to do it. So how might this work? The link I gave you automatically helps you divide it up into 50% toward needs, 30% toward wants, and 20% toward savings. And in the reality, like for most of us, sometimes our needs are a little higher than 50%. If I'm at the very beginning of my career, for example, and I have high student loans, maybe my needs are, I don't know, 55% or so forth. Maybe my wants are also a little higher than they should be. So what does that mean? In this example, this person was saving a little bit less than they should. That is okay. Like we can't come up with a budget that is so strict that it's not realistic. So instead, what I encourage you to use is use the framework as a way of setting targets. And then if you're spending a little bit too much on needs, maybe next year you have as a goal, all right, I'm going to continue to carve out some of my wants to reduce a little bit of them. So maybe I can increase my savings and so forth. Okay, so that is all I have for you right now. And I wanted to open it up to questions. I could spend all day talking about these topics. And so it's open to any questions you may have.
Joshua has his hand raised.
I
You're
can't,
on mute, Joshua.
you could unmute yourself.
Got it. Sorry. Since I didn't have my camera on earlier, I had the cat laying on the laptop. So, so you began the presentation by talking about why financial independence or freedom or security, but I'm curious how you would define financial freedom.
Oh
or
gosh, I
security.
just love that question. It's setting up a portfolio that is big enough. And the portfolio can include, let's say, rental real estate. It can include like stocks and bonds, whatever it is, that the income from it is big enough to support me in my lifestyle. And so what that means then is that my portfolio now is doing the heavy lifting. And thus, as I said to you earlier, I really didn't like my first job. In fact, I didn't like my first few jobs. And suddenly I realized, okay, if I have this asset that is producing income for me, I now can spend my time however I choose to. And in my case, it means teaching at CU, trying to help as many people as I can, instead of, let's say, just making someone who's wealthy wealthier, which was noble, but I wasn't having as broad an impact. So definition would be having a portfolio that is big enough to generate enough income so I can own my own time and spend it however I want. Most people think of retirement as that means I'm stopping working and playing golf. And truly, at the age of 30 and a half, I achieved financial independence. How did I do it? First of all, I was very lucky with the timing of my investing. The stock market was going up. Secondly, I was super disciplined about my spending. And the beauty of controlling consumption is that because I was used to a certain lifestyle, we saw with the 4% rule, the lower my annual spending is, the smaller my retirement portfolio needs to be. And so so then I can figure out then how big the portfolio needs to be. And so it allowed me to save more, to invest more, but it also meant that the size of my portfolio wasn't as big as maybe someone who needed $100,000 a year. And if you do want $100,000 a year, or I have some students model $250,000 or $500,000 a year, understand that the trade-off is time. Like, it was so easy for me to understand, for example, I still like a Tesla. I would love a Tesla. I love the concept of it environmentally. I love so many things about it. My salary at CU is probably not large enough that on an after-tax basis, for example, I'd have to work more than a year at CU to be able to buy a Tesla from my salary alone, separate from my portfolio. I'm not going to trade off a year of my life. Like, when you understand that concept, like, is a year of my life, 40 hours a week, worth this possession? For me, the answer is no. And there's a really great book on this topic. It's called Your Money or Your Life. And I would highly recommend that. I read that many years ago and it was life-changing. There's also a blog called Mr. Money Mustache, which I don't believe in all of the investment advice on either sources, either the book or the website, but the concepts from both places are life-changing, my opinion.
Wow, Diane, thank you. We do have a question in the chat. What are your thoughts on long-term CDs?
So first of all, I don't know anything about this person's situation who's asking it. And so it's very hard for me to say. It's not my favorite investment. I think personally, this is my risk profile. Yours may be different. I think it comes at a big cost to you, meaning there's a perception that CDs are super safe. They are, but usually you can make more money over long periods of time through other investments. Also, longer term CDs mean that if I decide I wanted to use the money for something else, CDs, if you break them early, there's usually penalties associated with breaking them early. And so they tend to come with the less flexibility than other investments.
We have another question in the chat from Janelle. This might be a silly question, but what do you include when calculating your annual spending? Seems obvious on the one hand, but I don't want to forget something key or include something that I shouldn't.
Yeah, that is a great question. And there is no silly question. So there is a link that I gave on the resources to like a website. It's called Nerd Wallet. They have a tool that will help you set up a 50-30-20 budget and ask you a series of questions to help you create the categories. There's a great book. Let me just think of the name of it. The author is Christine Benz, and I think it's called the 30-Minute Money Solutions. She has within, and I gave you a link to this also in the books that I recommended, but she has a link to big categories. Anything to you that's important to spend on, I would budget for it. Because like my son, for example, just started working like a year ago. And so he's healthy and he's young, but I said, hey, you need to be saving money besides for your medical insurance, but for the actual bills you're going to have. Breaking a leg, like emergency expenses, prescriptions, whether that's part of your budget right now or not, he needed to save for it. So kind of thinking through the main categories. Also, the website or the app You Need a Budget is fantastic. The downside to it is that it takes some time to set up. There's another one called Rocket Money, which is also great. And those tools I think are excellent because they'll ask you questions to get to the right categories. And then lastly, if you look at your credit card statement, most of us do most of our purchases through our credit cards. So you just see they'll categorize at the end of the year, like the main expenses, and that will give you a sense for how much you were spending at least last year.
Oh, thank you. Really quickly before the next question, what was the name of the first book you mentioned again?
That's a great one that I didn't put on the list of resources. It's, hang on a second, Your Money or Your Life.
Your Money or Your Life.
Or Your Life. It is just fantastic. Please don't follow all the investment advice. But it really helped me. It was a life-changing book that I probably read when I was 25. And it really helped me frame my desire to get freedom. And by the way, the whole topic of savings, most people perceive savings as being so difficult. Once I realized that I reframed it, instead of like saving being painful, I realized I was buying my freedom and no one was going to own my time. And once I understood that, it was addictive. It was, oh, wow, look, why are they not telling people this in school? What else do you have?
And there was one that I'm just going to circle back around on. Do you have advice about choosing and working with a financial advisor and an estimate of cost to expect from these services?
Yeah, I do. And again, I don't know your situation, so I have to have a big disclaimer. Let me start with, I don't think a lot of financial advice is great. I tell my students this, it is harder in the United States to become a hairstylist. Listen to me carefully. It is harder to become a hairstylist than a financial advisor. And most of us assume that our financial advisors' interests are aligned with our own. They are not. I'm sorry to say this. You can still find good advisors. I can, in the next presentation, I will add a section on how would I vet a financial advisor. what I would do is I would look right now for search on the Wall Street Journal. We get a free subscription to the Wall Street Journal from CU, so please use that. And you want to find an article by Jason Zweig, last name Z-W-E-I-G. He writes a fantastic weekly column. And a number of years ago, he wrote a column on how would I find a financial advisor. And it's excellent. And I will build it into the next presentation. In general, though, my opinion only, I think that an hourly, someone that you pay hourly ultimately is going to cost much less than someone who takes a fraction or a fee for your portfolio. And I'm going to show you for certain in the next presentation, even tiny fees really add up over time, and it's going to come at a big cost to you. So you have to minimize fees. Hourly planners do a fantastic job generally on the whole of costing less. And then he asks a whole bunch of really great questions. I'm not going to specifically tell you who to use, but I will say, in my opinion, Vanguard, Schwab, Fidelity, all three have services that will help you set up portfolios. I'm going to use Vanguard as an example because I know them better. It's not that I'm recommending them over someone else. And they charge a very small amount. I don't know, something like 1/4% or something like that, 0.25% to give you advice. So that a low fee might work for me. Also, CU has a free arrangement where once a year you get a consultation with TIAA CREF. And so you could use them. I would start there because they have no bias. They're not making any money from that meeting.
Diane, we have a question in the chat, and then we can take Joshua's question. For the 4% rule, how does time until retirement factor in? I'm 10 to 15 years from retirement with 2 kids yet to enter college in 1 year and 5 years.
That's a very hard question, but here's a general answer to it. Number one, if I'm not going to retire for 15 years, what I would do is I would take my annual expenses today. Let's say I think I want to spend $100,000 in retirement. And then I would grow it and I would use a calculator, and I can show you how to do this in another a session, or you can do it on the internet. The size of my portfolio today is $100,000. Just pretend that's how much I want to spend. And then I would say I want to grow it at the rate of inflation, essentially 3% per year for, in this example, 10 or 15 years. That will help you understand the size of the spending, inflation adjusted, I need to save. And then I would divide that number by 4%. If you are planning on helping your children pay for college, then you can't include in your existing portfolio any assets that you have set aside that you're planning on depleting for your kids' college, because they're not going to be around when you retire. Having said that, this is very controversial, but it's in all of your interest to prioritize your own retirement over your children's college funds. Why? You can borrow. They can borrow to go to college and you can't borrow to go to retire. Like, you need money. And so most people sacrifice their own financial stability and well-being for the hope that they're helping their kids. And I would seriously consider the cost of the tuition. At CU, we have amazing tuition benefits. It's far lower than some of these very elite and private schools. But that's another subject. And CU did not ask me to say that. Okay, Joshua, what else?
What would you recommend? So I'm one of the people that unfortunately got in on high interest rates because we had to buy in the last few years. And I have one kind of mentor in my life who basically says, like, never pay down your mortgage kind of a thing, because like it's a fixed expense. But with rates so high, the trade-off between, you know, what you can kind of get in the market versus a high interest rate is the gap is much narrower, right? So if I do have extra money every month that I want to save, Or just, should it go towards my mortgage or should it go towards investments?
So again, I don't know your specific situation. I promise we're going to answer this question in more detail when we meet again in the spring. But a big picture way of thinking about this, you hit on some of these issues. I do not like that most accountants say you need a mortgage. It's a de facto rule because they say, well, you need the tax deduction. But what they are ignoring is that what Josh was referring to almost is what I would call the cost of capital. So let's just say, I don't know, my mortgage is at 6% and I can deduct some of the interest from my tax return. And I'm pretending that the after-tax cost, instead of being 6%, is 4%. It is still costing 4%. It's costing something. And so what I do is I say, okay, well, I could earn every time I pay off some of my mortgage. Essentially, I'm locking in a 4% rate of return in this example, because that's how much it costs me. That's a pretty good rate right now. Earning 4% guaranteed. I'm actually pretty happy with that personally, because there's no risk. It's guaranteed. Where else could I put the money? Let's just say I was guaranteed. I found a bond. It's a treasury. This doesn't exist right now. I'm going to pretend. And there's a guaranteed rate of return of, let's say, 7%. Okay, it's 7% after tax, let's say, versus 4%. That's a pretty good trade. I'll keep the loan in that case because I'm earning 7%. My cost of this loan, in essence, is 4%. For most of us, it isn't like that. It's not as simple. Many years ago, maybe right before COVID, interest rates on mortgages might have been 2 or 3%. That was a great time. Most of us on this call don't have mortgages that low. If I had a mortgage that's low, it's an easier rate to beat the return on. But I would say for many of us, it's not just you, Joshua. Think of how many houses have bought and sold over the last few years. I think, I don't know, and I can't guarantee this. I think over the next few years, there'll be an opportunity for many of us to refinance. That's a good investment for most of us if we're going to stay in the house. I still like the idea of paying off some of my mortgage. Me personally, I have zero debt. I own 2 houses and I own both of them outright for my peace of mind. Okay, this was not for investment purposes. I just said, okay, I lose everything in the stock market. I get fired from CU. I've in this draconian situation, I could sleep a little better at night knowing that really all I have to do is cover my electricity and my food. Most people, though, may not be in that situation. Maybe they say, okay, I have a super, super low mortgage. Great. In that situation, maybe you can do better investing in something else if there's a very significant positive spread. I hope that helps. I'll stay on for a few more minutes. Everybody can drop off if you want. Erin, you could wrap it up.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely want to be mindful of time. A couple of closing items, but as I'm just kind of wrapping up, why don't you put your final comments, maybe some love in the chat for Diane. This was a super active session, and I can tell you, I was doing the math, and just by your advice, I think I could, in half an hour, make $6,000 a year. Is that right? Anyways, wild. So a couple of logistics. We will post this recording on the Be Well site. So click on Be Well and then click on Let's See You Well, and the recording will be up hopefully in a couple days. I've also posted the link to Jedi for more information and resources. Want to just offer my sincere gratitude for all of the participants, and certainly for Diane for sharing her expertise. This is such a great way to support a culture of care in the College of Arts and Sciences and beyond. So we've got a couple seconds. Just leave your comments in the chat. I know Diane said she'd be happy to stick around for a couple of minutes, but I also want to be mindful for everyone else's time. With that being said, I'm going to stop the recording. But let's stick around. And if you don't want to hang out, thank you all. See you at the next one.
And Erin, when you actually publish this, can